The arrow pierced through the transport shuttle's hull 3 seconds before impact. Alarm shrieked as Lieutenant Derek Hansen threw himself against the control panel, his fingers dancing across emergency protocols while the craft spiraled toward the frozen wasteland below. His co-pilot, Lieutenant Mara Phillips, was already dead, slumped in her harness with alien alloy protruding from her chest. "Mayday, mayday, this is Earth Scout 79er. We are going down hard on Cathara Prime," Derek shouted into the comm, knowing nobody would answer. The jamming signal had started the moment they entered orbit. Someone wanted them here. Someone wanted them dead. The shuttle hit ice at terminal velocity. Derek's consciousness flickered like a damaged bulb. When his vision cleared, he tasted copper and saw his own blood frozen to the cracked viewport. Outside shapes moved through the blizzard. Tall shapes. Wrong shapes. He reached for his sidearm just as the hatch exploded inward. They dragged him out into wind that cut like razors. Derek counted 7 of them, maybe more. Catharan shock troops, 8 feet of scaled muscle and weaponized hate. The Empire's finest killers, the species that had glassed 12 human colonies in the past year alone. One of them growled something in their clicking language. Another struck Derek across the face with enough force to crack bone. "The human dies slow," one said in broken English. "Message to Earth, no mercy." Derek spat blood onto the ice. "You first." The Catharan raised a blade that hummed with lethal energy, ready to make the killing stroke last hours instead of seconds. Then someone else spoke. "Step away from him." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, soft as falling snow but carrying the weight of collapsing stars. The Catharans froze mid-motion, their scales rippling with something Derek had never seen them display before. Fear. A figure emerged from the whiteout, small, hunched, wrapped in a tattered gray cloak that dragged across the ice. Human-sized, but moving wrong. Each step too deliberate, too precise. The hood obscured everything except a glimpse of pale hands. One Catharan found his courage and snarled. "This is Imperial business, scavenger. Walk away or join the corpse." The figure stopped 10 meters out. "I said," the voice repeated, and now Derek heard something underneath it, something ancient and sharp. "Step away." The Catharan who had struck Derek raised his weapon. "You dare." The figure's hand moved. Derek didn't see what happened next. He only saw the result. 7 Catharan shock troops, the Empire's most decorated killing squad, collapsed simultaneously onto the ice. Not dead. Worse. Kneeling. Their weapons clattered down, their heads bowed, and every single one of them was trembling. The figure in the gray cloak walked forward, her steps crunching through ice and terror alike. She reached up with both hands and pulled back her hood. Derek's breath caught. The face underneath was human, young, maybe 30, unremarkable features, brown hair pulled back tight, eyes the color of steel in starlight. She looked like nobody. Like everyone, like the kind of person you'd pass on any street in any human settlement without a second glance. But the Catharans stared at her like she was their ending made flesh. "Please," one of them whispered in their own language, the translator barely catching it. "Mercy. We did not know. We did not know she was here." The woman looked at Derek with those steel-colored eyes. "You're bleeding," she said simply. "Let's get you patched up before we discuss what happens to them." Derek's medical training told him he had a concussion, 3 cracked ribs, and maybe 10 minutes before shock set in. His survival instinct told him something else entirely. Run. Not from the Catharans, still prostrate on the ice. From her. "Can you walk?" the woman asked, extending a hand. Her voice was normal now, almost gentle. Like the other voice had never existed. Derek took her hand because refusing seemed more dangerous than accepting. Her grip was firm but not crushing. Human. Normal. Except nothing about this was normal. "Who are you?" he managed. "Someone who doesn't like uneven odds." She guided him away from the kneeling Catharans, supporting his weight with surprising strength. "Your shuttle's destroyed, but there's a settlement 14 kilometers east. Can you make it?" "Those soldiers," Derek said, looking back. They hadn't moved, hadn't even raised their heads. "What did you do to them?" Reminded them of history they'd prefer to forget. She pulled a medical kit from beneath her cloak, the kind issued to human military field units. Hold still. She worked fast, injecting him with combat stims that cleared his head and sealed the worst bleeding. Derek watched her face for answers and found only questions. She moved like someone who'd done this 1,000 times. 10,000. The Empire doesn't bow to humans, Derek said. We're losing the war, badly. So either you're not human, or you're something worse. I'm human. She finished bandaging his ribs with practiced efficiency. I'm also very, very old. Before Derek could process that impossibility, one of the Ketherans spoke. The largest one, covered in military decorations that marked him as a commander. Forgiveness, Ancient One. We did not recognize your signature. The human was unidentified. Protocol demanded. Protocol. The woman's voice shifted back to that other thing, that weight that made reality bend. You follow protocol now, Commander Veskov? Your empire built protocol on the graves of civilizations. Wear it out. Should I remind you what happens when you point weapons at people under my protection? Commander Veskov pressed his face harder against the ice. No, Ancient One, never again. Derek's mind raced. Ancient One. They knew her. The Empire knew her. How long? He asked quietly. She didn't look at him. Does it matter? Yeah, it really does. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. I was there when your species figured out fire. I was there when the Catharan Empire conquered its first world. I've been nobody for a very long time, Lieutenant Hansen. It's safer that way. For who? For everyone. She stood, facing the kneeling soldiers. You have one chance to leave this planet alive. Tell your commanders that humanity is not alone. Tell them the old agreements still hold. Tell them if they continue this war, I will stop being nobody. Yes, Ancient One, they chorused. Go. The Catharans rose as one and fled toward their own transport, moving faster than Derek had ever seen their species move. Within seconds, they were swallowed by the blizzard. Derek tried to stand and nearly collapsed. The woman caught him easily. Easy. The stims need time to work. You're telling me you're what? Immortal? Some kind of ancient human guardian? Derek laughed, then winced at the pain. That's insane. It's accurate. Then why are we losing? Why let the Empire burn our colonies if you're so powerful? Her expression hardened. Because I made a choice 3,000 years ago. I chose to let humanity grow without interference, to let you make your own mistakes, win your own victories. I've watched empires rise and fall. I've seen species destroy themselves with power they didn't earn. I won't let that happen to yours. So you just watch. While we die, I intervene. When extinction becomes likely, your species isn't there yet. She started walking, half carrying him through the snow. You're losing battles, Lieutenant, not the war. Tell that to the 12 colonies. I have. I've told it to the families burying their dead, to the soldiers fighting impossible odds, to the politicians making desperate choices. Her voice carried centuries of weariness. I don't expect gratitude. I expect survival. They walked in silence for several minutes, the wind howling around them. Derek's mind churned through implications. If the Ketherans know you, others must too. The whole Empire. The old ones remember. The young ones think I'm myth. She adjusted her grip on him. I prefer it that way. Fear is useful, but legend is more flexible. And now, you just broke cover to save one random pilot. You're not random. She glanced at him. Your father was Senator Grant Hansen. Your mother was Commander Lisa Hayes. You're third-generation military, decorated twice for valor and currently assigned to deep reconnaissance because someone in Earth Command thinks you have good instincts. Derek stopped walking. How do you know that? I know everything about the people I'm responsible for. She pulled him forward again. 7 billion humans across 43 worlds. I know your birthdays, your fears, your hopes. I know which of you will change history and which will die forgotten. It's exhausting and necessary. That's not protection, that's surveillance. It's both. No apology in her voice. Welcome to being a species that matters, Lieutenant. You don't get privacy when extinction is always one war away. The settlement appeared through the snow, a cluster of prefab structures glowing with emergency lighting. Derek saw movement, people responding to the crash. "They'll have questions," he said. "Tell them you survived the crash and walked here. Tell them the Ketherans retreated for unknown reasons." She released him, letting him stand on his own. "Don't mention me. They'll want to know why the Empire ran. Then let them wonder. Mystery is powerful." She pulled her hood back up, obscuring her face. "I'll be watching, Lieutenant Hansen, you and everyone else. Try not to die stupidly. Wait." Derek grabbed her arm. "What's your name?" "Your real name?" She was quiet for a long moment. "I had one once. Before I became this." She gently removed his hand. "Now I'm nobody. It's better that way." She turned and walked back into the blizzard. Derek watched until she vanished completely, then started toward the settlement, his mind full of impossible truths and questions that would haunt him forever. Behind him, in the snow where the Ketherans had knelt, he saw something that made his blood freeze. Footprints. 7 sets leading away, and one set that simply ended, as if she'd never existed at all. She looked like a nobody, until she removed her hood and the Empire bowed.txt. Derek spent 6 days in the settlement's medical bay answering questions he couldn't truthfully answer. The investigators came in waves. First the local security, then Earth military intelligence, then someone from a branch so classified they didn't bother with insignia. They all wanted the same thing: an explanation for why an elite Ketheron death squad retreated from a single downed pilot. Derek stuck to the story. Crash. Enemy withdrawal for unknown tactical reasons. They didn't believe him, but they couldn't prove otherwise. On the 7th day, Captain Aaron Fletcher arrived with new orders, an expression that said he knew Derek was hiding something but wouldn't push. Not yet. "You're being reassigned," Fletcher said, sliding a data tablet across the medical bay table. "Effective immediately. Earth Command wants you at Forward Base Stryker." Derek scanned the orders. Stryker was deep in contested space, right on the front lines of the Catharan advance. "This is a frontline combat posting. You're a frontline pilot. I'm a reconnaissance specialist. Not anymore." Fletcher leaned back. "Something's changed, Hansen. The Ketherans are pulling back across 3 sectors. Not retreating, just repositioning. Consolidating. Like they're preparing for something big, or scared of something bigger. Command thinks you might have insights. I told you everything I know. You told us everything you're willing to share." Fletcher's eyes narrowed. "I've read your file. Decorated, reliable, no history of deception. But you came back from that ice ball different. Everyone sees it. So whatever happened out there, whatever you're protecting, just remember which side you're on when it matters." Derek met his gaze. "I'm on humanity's side. Always. Your transport leaves in 2 hours. Forward Base Stryker was a fortress carved into an asteroid, bristling with weapons and housing 15,000 personnel. Derek arrived to controlled chaos, ships launching and docking, soldiers drilling, intelligence officers hunched over tactical displays showing the Empire's mysterious repositioning. He was assigned quarters in the officers' section and told to report to strategic operations at 0600. He had 12 hours to rest. He lasted 4 before curiosity won. The base library was small, mostly technical manuals and tactical databases. But there was a historical archive, and Derek had questions that wouldn't stop burning. He started searching. Ancient human legends, immortality myths, guardian figures, most of it was garbage, fantasy stories, religious nonsense, conspiracy theories about secret rulers and hidden civilizations. But then he found something that made his spine tingle. Archived report from 70 years ago, filed by a researcher named Dr. Patricia Vance. She'd been investigating historical anomalies, patterns that appeared across centuries of human development. Her conclusion was buried in academic language, but the core was clear. Someone or something had been subtly influencing human progress for thousands of years, preventing extinction events, nudging technology at critical moments, always staying just out of sight. The report had been dismissed as speculation. Dr. Vance had disappeared 3 months after publishing it. Derek kept digging. He found 17 more researchers over the past 2 centuries who'd investigated similar patterns. 12 had vanished. 3 had recanted their work publicly. 2 had died in accidents. Interesting reading, Derek spun. A woman stood in the library entrance, wearing the uniform of a base technician. Blonde hair, green eyes, maybe 25. Her name tag read Collins. Just brushing up on history, Derek said carefully. History. Collins walked closer, her movements too smooth, too deliberate. Funny thing about history, Lieutenant. It's written by survivors, and survivors are very good at forgetting inconvenient truths. Derek's hand moved toward his sidearm. Collins smiled. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here because she asked me to watch over you. Make sure you don't do anything stupid like publish your findings or tell people what you saw on Cathara Prime. You work for her. We all work for her, Lieutenant. Some of us just know it. Collins sat down across from him. There are maybe 300 of us across human space. Eyes and ears. We report threats, handle problems quietly, and make sure nobody gets too close to the truth. You're spies. We're insurance. Collins pulled up the report Derek had been reading. Dr. Kren. Vance got too close. Started making noise about proof, about exposing the Guardian. So she was removed from the equation, not killed. Just relocated somewhere she could live quietly and stop asking dangerous questions. That's kidnapping. That's survival. Collins closed the file. Humanity isn't ready to know there's an immortal watching over them. Some would worship her. Others would hunt her. Most would become dependent, stop fighting their own battles, stop growing. She's seen it happen to other species. It never ends well. Derek leaned forward. Then why save me? Why reveal herself at all? Because the Ketherans crossed a line. They're not just fighting a war anymore. They're planning something that threatens human extinction. She had to remind them of the rules. Collins stood. And she saved you specifically because your family matters. Your sister, Lieutenant. Do you know what she's working on? Derek felt ice in his veins. Lauren's a civilian researcher. Xenobiology. Lauren Hansen is 3 months away from a breakthrough in Ketheran biological vulnerability. Her research will give humanity the weapon that turns this war around. Collins headed for the door. The Empire knows. They sent that death squad to Cathara Prime as bait. They wanted you to follow a false lead, get killed, and break your sister emotionally. Grieving researchers make mistakes. Fatal mistakes. How do you know this? Collins paused at the entrance. Because she knows everything, Lieutenant. Every threat, every opportunity, every branching path of human survival. She's been playing this game for millennia. The Ketherans are good at war, but she's better at protecting what matters. I want to talk to her. No, you don't. You want answers, and answers would destroy the comfortable fiction you've built about free will and human independence. Collins looked back, her expression sympathetic. Go to sleep, Lieutenant Hansen. Report for duty tomorrow. Fight your war. Protect your species. And to trust that when extinction actually comes knocking, she'll be there. Like she always has been. Collins left. Derek sat alone in the library, surrounded by carefully curated history and dangerous truths. He thought about his sister, about 12 dead colonies, about an immortal woman who claimed to know 7 billion people by heart. He thought about footprints that ended in snow, and he realized with absolute certainty that his life had just become exponentially more complicated. His communicator buzzed, a message from an unknown sender. Your sister is safe. The research will succeed. Focus on your duty. The war needs you awake, not chasing ghosts. No signature. Derek deleted the message and headed back to his quarters, knowing he wouldn't sleep, but having orders to follow and a war to fight. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, someone nobody and everyone watched over humanity with ancient eyes and infinite patience. And the Empire, old and powerful and terrifying, repositioned their forces and remembered why some wars were better left unfought. She looked like a nobody. Quaze. Until she removed her hood and the Empire bowed.txt, the Ketheron assault hit forward base striker at 040, 3 hours before Derek's scheduled briefing. Explosions tore through the asteroid's outer defenses as capital ships materialized from jump space, their weapons already firing. Derek rolled out of his bunk as alarms screamed, pulling on his flight suit while the base shuddered under bombardment. All pilots to Hangar Bay 3, this is not a drill, the intercom bellowed. Derek sprinted through corridors filled with running personnel and emergency lighting. The base's shields were holding, but barely. Through viewport windows, he saw Ketharan fighters swarming like angry insects, their plasma cannons chewing through defensive turrets. He reached the hangar as Captain Fletcher emerged from the tactical center, blood running from a cut above his eye. "They brought 4 dreadnoughts and 50 support craft," Fletcher shouted over the chaos. "Intelligence says this is a full extermination force. They're not here to capture Stryker. They're here to erase it." Derek climbed into his fighter's cockpit, systems powering up around him. What changed? Yesterday they were pulling back, now this? Unknown. But they're targeting specific sections of the base, research labs, communications. Like they're looking for something? Derek's blood went cold. Lauren's research. They knew. "Launch in 30 seconds, Fletcher said through the comm. "Buy us time for evacuation protocols. Earth Command is sending reinforcements, but they're 2 hours out. We won't last 20 minutes against those dreadnoughts. Then make every minute count." Derek's fighter screamed out of the hangar into hell itself. Plasma fire crisscrossed the void. Human and Catharan ships locked in desperate combat. He banked hard, targeting systems lighting up with enemy signatures. Too many. Way too many. "Stryker Wing, focus fire on the fighter screen," he commanded, taking tactical lead. "Don't engage the capitals. We can't scratch them." His squadron fell into formation, 12 fighters against an impossible force. They dove into the Ketharan swarm, cannons blazing, missiles tracking. Derek's combat computer screamed warnings as enemy fire chased him through 3-dimensional chess played at lethal speeds. He destroyed 3 fighters in the first minute, lost 2 wingmen in the second. The mathematics were brutal and clear. They were all going to die. Then, something impossible happened. The lead Catharan dreadnought simply stopped firing. Its weapons went dark, its engines cut to station-keeping thrust. Then the second dreadnought followed suit. Then, the third and fourth. The fighter screen broke off engagement, retreating to defensive positions around their capital ships. "What's happening?" Lieutenant Brandon Cole shouted over the comm. "Why are they stopping?" Derek checked his sensors, looking for the trick, the trap. Instead, he found something that made his mouth go dry. A single small craft had appeared between the human base and the Ketharan fleet. No weapon signatures, no defensive shields. Just a gray civilian transport that looked like it had been pulled from a scrapyard. "Unknown vessel, identify yourself," Fletcher transmitted from Stryker. "You're in a combat zone." The response came on all frequencies, voice and text simultaneously. "Ketharan Fleet Commander, this is your only warning. Withdraw immediately or face consequences your empire cannot afford." Derek recognized that voice, that weight behind simple words. Her. The Ketharan response was furious clicks and growls, the translator struggling to keep pace. "You have no authority here, Myth. This is Imperial military action against a legitimate target. Withdraw or be destroyed with them." "I gave you a chance on Cathara Prime," she replied, her voice calm as deep space. "I reminded you of the old agreements. You chose to ignore that reminder. Very well." The gray transport's engines flared. Derek's sensors went insane as energy readings spiked beyond anything his fighter could measure. The transport accelerated toward the Ketharan fleet at speeds that should have torn it apart. It didn't. Instead, it moved between the dreadnoughts like a dancer. And where it passed, ships simply went dark. Not destroyed. Disabled. 4 massive warships, each carrying enough firepower to level a continent, reduced to floating scrap in under 10 seconds. The fighter screen scattered in panic. "All Ketharan forces, final warning." Her voice cut through their chaos. "Leave now or I start removing ships permanently. Your choice." The Ketharan commander's response was a single word, translated simply as retreat. The entire fleet jumped to hyperspace within 30 seconds, abandoning their disabled dreadnoughts and fleeing like prey from an apex predator. Silence fell across the battlefield, broken only by damage reports and the sound of human pilots trying to process what they'd just witnessed. The gray transport turned toward Stryker, approaching the hangar bay with gentle precision. "All fighters, return to base," Fletcher ordered, his voice shaken. "And someone get me a security team to Hangar 3, now." Derek landed his fighter and sprinted toward the hangar where the transport had docked. He arrived to find 30 armed soldiers surrounding the craft, weapons raised while Fletcher and 2 intelligence officers stood at the ramp. The hatch opened. She walked out, still wearing that tattered gray cloak, hood down. Still looking like nobody special. Just a woman who could disable 4 warships with a ship that shouldn't be able to fly. "I'm placing you under arrest," Fletcher said, though his voice lacked conviction. "You'll be detained pending identification and, no, you won't." She walked past him like he didn't exist. "You'll thank me for saving 15,000 lives, then you'll let me leave, because if you don't, the Catherans will return with 20 dreadnoughts instead of 4, and I won't be here to stop them. We have protocols, chain of command. You can't just..." She stopped and looked at him, really looked at him, with those steel-colored eyes that had seen civilizations rise and fall. Fletcher's words died in his throat. "Captain Aaron Fletcher, age 38, married to Christine for 12 years. 2 daughters named Sophie and Maya. You joined the military because your grandfather died at the Battle of Proxima Station. You're brave, competent, and loyal to a fault. You're also 12 minutes away from a nervous breakdown because nothing in your training prepared you for this." Fletcher stared. "How? I know everyone, Captain. I've known your family for 6 generations. Your great-great-grandmother made me promise to look after her descendants, so here I am, looking after you." She turned to Derek. "We need to talk, privately." Fletcher found his voice. "Lieutenant Hansen is under my command. He's not going anywhere without..." "Yes, he is." She didn't raise her voice, didn't threaten, just stated fact. "You can try to stop me, Captain. Bring your soldiers, your weapons, your authority. It won't matter. Or you can trust that I just saved your base and let me have 5 minutes with a man who's earned answers." The hangar fell silent. Fletcher looked at Derek, conflict clear on his face. "Finally," he nodded. 5 minutes. Then you both report to debriefing." She led Derek to an empty maintenance bay, closing the door behind them.
Up close, she looked tired, ancient tired.
"They're escalating," she said without preamble. "The Catharans decided your sister's research is too dangerous to allow. They were going to destroy this entire base just to make sure it dies with her. Lauren's not here. She's on Earth, in a civilian research facility. She's being transferred here tomorrow under military protection. The Empire has spies in Earth Command. They knew." The woman leaned against a workbench. "I disabled their fleet, but I can't be everywhere. They'll try again, differently. Then stop them. You're obviously powerful enough. I can delay extinction. I can remind the Empire that humanity has protection, but I can't fight their entire civilization without becoming the thing I'm trying to prevent." She met his eyes. "If I wipe out the Catharan Empire, humanity learns that overwhelming force solves all problems. You become dependent on me. You stop growing, stop evolving, stop being the species that survives on your own merit. We're dying on our own merit. You're struggling. There's a difference." She pulled back her cloak, revealing a device on her wrist that looked like liquid metal. "Your sister's research works, Lieutenant. In 3 months, humanity will have a biological weapon that makes Catharans vulnerable to human diseases. In 6 months, you'll turn the war around. In 2 years, you'll force a peace treaty. I've seen the probabilities. You win, without me having to destroy your enemy for you." Derek processed that. "You're from the future. I'm from every future that matters. I exist in all timelines simultaneously, collapsing probability into survival." She smiled sadly. "It's exhausting and necessary, and I can't stop even if I wanted to. Why are you telling me this? Because you're going to be important. Not today, not tomorrow, but in the branching paths ahead. You'll make choices that save or doom thousands. I need you to understand what's at stake." She moved toward the door. "Protect your sister. Fight your war. Trust that humanity's survival is calculated and assured as long as you keep making the right choices. And if I don't, then I intervene again, until either you survive or I decide you're not worth saving." She paused at the exit. "That's never happened yet, Lieutenant. Don't be the first." She left. Derek stood alone, surrounded by tools and machinery, wondering if free will existed or if it was just another comfortable fiction. His communicator buzzed. "Lauren messaging from Earth. Big news, little brother. My research just got fast-tracked. Military escort arrives tomorrow. They're saying it could end the war. Isn't that amazing?" Derek stared at the message, thinking about probability and protection, and the price of survival. He replied with a simple thumbs up, because what else could he say? Outside, alarms finally stopped screaming, and humanity kept fighting a war they didn't know was already won. Lauren Hansen arrived at Forward Base Stryker under maximum security, escorted by 6 warships and enough firepower to level a city. Derek met her at the primary docking bay, pulling her into a hug that lasted longer than military protocol allowed. "You look terrible," Lauren said, stepping back to study his face. She was 2 years older, sharper around the edges, with their mother's dark hair and their father's stubborn jaw. "They said you survived a crash and fought off Catharan elites. Want to tell me the real story?" "Not even a little bit." She laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Yeah, that's what I thought. This whole thing feels wrong, Derek. Yesterday I was doing basic research. Today I'm being treated like I'm carrying the cure for cancer." "Maybe you are. Maybe." She hefted the sealed container holding her research samples. "Or maybe I'm being used as bait for something bigger. Either way, Command wants results in 48 hours. They've built me a lab in the secure section, assigned me a team, and made it very clear that failure isn't an option." They walked through corridors buzzing with activity. Stryker had gone from forward base to fortress overnight, reinforcements pouring in from 3 sectors. Everyone knew something critical was happening. Nobody knew exactly what. Lauren's lab was impressive. State-of-the-art equipment that must have cost a fortune to transport and install. Her research team was already prepping workstations. 5 brilliant minds pulled from various projects and thrown together under emergency conditions. "Dr. Hansen, welcome," said Dr. Raymond Cooper, a xenobiologist with silver hair and nervous energy. "We've reviewed your preliminary data. If your hypothesis is correct, this changes everything." "It's correct," Lauren said with quiet confidence. Catharan immune systems evolved in isolation for millions of years. They've never encountered Earth-based pathogens. With the right modifications, we can create a virus that their biology can't fight. "A plague," Derek said quietly. "A weapon." Lauren met his gaze. "One that forces them to negotiate instead of exterminating us. Would you prefer we keep losing colonies?" She had a point. Derek hated it, but she had a point. "I'll let you work," he said. "Call me if you need anything. I need you to stop looking at me like I'm building a doomsday device, aren't you?" Lauren's expression hardened. "I'm building survival, little brother. Same as everyone else in this war." Derek left her to it, heading back to his quarters with thoughts that wouldn't settle. The woman's words echoed in his mind. "Your sister's research works. You'll turn the war around, but at what cost?" He found Collins waiting outside his door, still wearing her technician disguise. "She's here," Collins said unnecessarily. "The countdown starts now?" "Countdown to what?" "To the moment the Catharans realize they can't let that research succeed. They'll throw everything at this base. Ships, soldiers, weapons they've kept in reserve. The Empire doesn't surrender, Lieutenant. It adapts or destroys. Then she'll stop them." "Oh," like she stopped the dreadnoughts. Collins shook her head. "She won't. This is humanity's test. Can you protect your own breakthrough? Can you fight for your own survival without her intervention? If she keeps saving you, you never learn to save yourselves. People will die. People are already dying. The question is whether they die for something that makes you stronger or something that makes you dependent." Collins pulled out a data chip. "She wanted me to give you this. Security protocols for the lab. Weak points the Catharans might exploit. Probabilities for various attack scenarios. It's not interference, it's information. What you do with it determines whether humanity passes or fails this test." Derek took the chip. "And if we fail?" "Then she intervenes, saves everyone, and humanity learns nothing. The war continues. More colonies burn. Eventually, you become the species that can't function without their guardian. It's happened before to others. It's ugly. Colin's turn to leave. Don't fail, Lieutenant. Derek went inside and loaded the chip. What he found made his blood run cold. 73 different attack scenarios, each analyzed down to probability percentages. Commando raids, sabotage, infiltration, frontal assault. Even scenarios involving Catherine's suicide tactics that would breach the lab before anyone could respond. But there were also countermeasures. Defensive positions that reduced probability of success, personnel assignments that closed security gaps, timing rotations that prevented predictable patterns. It was a roadmap to survival, written by someone who'd seen every possible future and calculated the best path through. Derek spent 6 hours analyzing the data, then went to Fletcher with recommendations disguised as tactical instinct. Fletcher, still shaken from watching 4 dreadnoughts get disabled by a ghost, listened and implemented every suggestion without question. The base transformed. Security tripled around the research wing. Patrol patterns randomized, sensor arrays recalibrated to detect the specific technologies Catherine's used for stealth insertion. On the second day, Lauren made her breakthrough. The modified virus worked perfectly in simulations, attacking Catherine's cellular structure with devastating efficiency. Production could begin within a week. On the third day, the Empire struck. They came in small, fast ships that materialized inside the asteroid field using jump technology that shouldn't have been possible at such close range. 50 craft, each carrying elite commandos bred specifically for close combat. Stryker's defenses, positioned exactly as the data chip recommended, shredded 43 ships before they could deploy troops. 7 made it through. Derek was in the armory when the breach alarm sounded. He grabbed an assault rifle and sprinted toward the research wing, following training and instinct and the calculations of an immortal who claimed to know everything. The Catherines were already inside, moving through corridors with lethal precision. Derek found the first group near Junction 12. 3 8-foot killing machines against 6 human soldiers who didn't stand a chance. He didn't think, just fired, putting rounds into vulnerable neck joints identified in the data analysis. 2 Catherines went down. The third turned toward him, weapon rising. Lieutenant Brandon Cole appeared from a side passage, plasma grenade already airborne. The explosion turned the Catherine into scorched meat. Research wing is locked down, Cole reported, breathing hard. But there's a group trying to cut through the emergency bulkhead. They brought cutting gear we've never seen before. Derek checked his tactical display. The data chip had predicted this exact scenario. Probability 73%. Recommended response: concentrate fire on the power supply for their cutting equipment, located center mass on the lead technician. Follow me, Derek said, already moving. They reached the research wing to find 4 Catharans working frantically on the bulkhead while 2 more provided cover fire. Human defenders were pinned down, unable to advance without casualties. Derek aimed for center mass on the lead technician, exactly as instructed. His first shot hit the power supply, which exploded with enough force to throw the Catharan backward and destroy their cutting equipment. The remaining attackers charged in fury. Derek's team met them with concentrated fire, using positioning recommended in the data. Kill zones overlapping. No escape routes. It was brutal and efficient and over in 20 seconds. The final Catharan died reaching for the bulkhead, claws scraping metal, desperate to complete a mission that had already failed. Derek stood over the bodies, rifle still raised, waiting for more. Nothing came. All clear, Fletcher reported over the comm. Every boarding party eliminated. 0 casualties on our side. 0. Someone want to explain how we just executed perfect defense against an attack we shouldn't have been able to predict? Derek looked at the data chip still connected to his tactical system. At probability calculations that had just saved hundreds of lives without direct intervention. Good intelligence and better luck, sir, he lied. In her lab, Lauren didn't even know the battle had happened. She was too focused on refining the virus that would change the war, protected by calculations and defenses arranged by someone who'd seen this exact moment play out across infinite timelines. Derek walked back to his quarters, exhausted and exhilarated, and terrified of what he'd become. A puppet following a script, or a soldier using every advantage to protect his species. He found a new message on his personal terminal. No sender identification. Well done, Lieutenant. Humanity passed its test. The weapon will be completed. The war will turn. And you'll never be certain whether you won through your own skill or my careful planning. That uncertainty is important. It keeps you striving, growing, refusing to accept easy answers. The message deleted itself after he read it. Derek sat in darkness, thinking about free will and predetermined outcomes, and whether the difference even mattered when survival was the only goal that counted. Outside his window, stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere among them, an immortal woman watched over 7 billion souls, knowing their futures, calculating their survival, and hoping they'd never realize how carefully their choices were being guided. The Empire was learning that lesson the hard way. Humanity was still blissfully ignorant, and Derek Hansen, caught between knowledge and action, wondered which was worse. The Ketharan Empire requested peace negotiations 6 weeks after Lauren's virus entered production. Derek stood in the observation deck of the diplomatic station, watching the alien delegation's ships approach through reinforced windows. Massive vessels, still armed but flying under truce flags, their hulls marked with symbols that translated roughly to parley under duress. They're terrified, Lauren said beside him. She'd been assigned to the diplomatic mission as scientific advisor. Her research the entire reason this meeting was happening. Intelligence says their high command debated scorched earth tactics, destroy themselves rather than admit humans could threaten them. But they didn't. No, something changed their minds. Lauren glanced at him. You know what, don't you? Or who? Derek didn't answer. He'd spent 6 weeks watching the war shift, watching Ketharan aggression turn to caution, watching an empire that had burned 12 colonies suddenly retreat across every front. The virus had been deployed exactly 3 times, limited strikes on military targets that proved its effectiveness without genocide. 3 times, just enough to make the point. Someone had calculated that number perfectly. The talks start in 1 hour, Lauren continued. Ambassador Karen Steele thinks we can secure territorial concessions and reparations, maybe even a permanent ceasefire. You don't sound convinced. I'm a scientist, not a diplomat. I know what the virus can do. I also know the Ketharans have been a unified empire for 8,000 years. They don't surrender, they adapt. She turned to face him fully. So either we hit them harder than anyone realizes, or something else is making them negotiate. It's something they fear more than us. Before Derek could respond, Collins appeared at the observation deck entrance. She'd abandoned her technician disguise for a diplomatic aide uniform, blending seamlessly into the station's personnel. Lieutenant Hansen, Dr. Hansen, Ambassador Steele requests your presence in the briefing room, Collins said formally. Then, quieter, she's here. On the station. Watching. Derek felt his pulse quicken. Where? Everywhere that matters. Collins led them through corridors filled with nervous diplomats and heavy security. The Ketharans brought their supreme commander. First time he's left their homeworld in 2 centuries. That should tell you how serious this is. The briefing room held 20 people, all essential personnel for the negotiations. Ambassador Steele stood at the head of the table, a woman in her 60s with iron gray hair and eyes that had witnessed 3 decades of diplomatic failures. We've received the Ketharan preliminary terms, Steele announced. They're offering immediate cessation of hostilities, withdrawal from contested territories, and technology exchanges. In return, they want guarantees we won't deploy the biological weapon offensively. That's it? Captain Fletcher, promoted to station security chief, sounded incredulous. They're surrendering. They're negotiating from weakness, Steele corrected. There's a difference. Dr. Hansen, what's your assessment? Can they develop immunity to the virus? Lauren pulled up holographic projections. Eventually, yes. Their biotechnology is advanced. Give them 10 years, maybe 20. They'll adapt, but that's time they don't have. The virus is already forcing resource reallocation. Their military infrastructure's collapsing, trying to contain it. So we have a window, Steele said. A chance to end this war before they adapt and resume aggression. What the question is, whether we can trust them to honor these terms. The room erupted into debate. Military officers wanted harsher conditions. Political advisors worried about appearing weak. Scientists argued over verification protocols. Derek watched it all and felt something wrong. This was too easy. Too convenient. His communicator buzzed with a private message. Exit the briefing. Observation Deck 7. Now. He excused himself quietly and made his way through the station. Observation Deck 7 was empty, its windows showing the diplomatic ships holding position like predators in temporary truce. She was waiting, hood down, wearing a station maintenance uniform that made her invisible to everyone who passed. They're lying, she said without preamble. The Ketherans. Their supreme commander isn't here to negotiate. He's here to buy time while their science divisions work on immunity. In 8 months, they'll have it. In 9, they'll resume the war with even greater fury. In 12, humanity loses everything you've gained. Derek felt cold spreading through his chest. Then why let them negotiate at all? Why not warn Steele? Because humanity needs to learn this lesson the hard way. She turned to face him, those ancient eyes carrying weights he couldn't fathom. I've protected you from extinction. I've guided your probabilities toward survival, but I can't make you wise. That comes from experience, from mistakes, from touching the fire and learning it burns. You're saying we should let them betray us? Let people die to learn a lesson? I'm saying I'll prevent the extinction, not the suffering, not the loss. Those are necessary for growth. She gestured toward the Ketheron ships. Their supreme commander is named Krythok. He's brilliant, ruthless, and believes humanity is a temporary anomaly in a galaxy that belongs to his species. He came here personally to assess whether you're truly dangerous or just lucky. And what will he conclude? That depends on what happens in the next hour. She pulled out a small device, its purpose unclear. I'm going to give you a choice, Lieutenant Hansen, the kind that defines species. You can walk back into that briefing room, say nothing, and let the negotiations proceed. The peace treaty gets signed. The Ketherans buy their time. In 8 months, they return stronger, and humanity fights another war with better preparation and harder-won wisdom. Or you take this device. It contains irrefutable proof of Ketheran deception. Communication intercepts between Krythok and his science command. Plans for resumed aggression. Evidence that will collapse the negotiations and force humanity to make a harder choice now instead of later. She held it out. But if you use it, you rob your species of the experience. You become dependent on my intelligence instead of developing your own. You win this battle and potentially lose the larger war of self-sufficiency. Derek stared at the device. That's not a choice. That's a trap. It's both. Welcome to the complexity of free will when someone's always watching your back. She pressed the device into his hand. I've calculated both paths. Both lead to human survival. One path is easier now, harder later. The other reverses that equation. Your decision determines which kind of species humanity becomes. What would you choose? I'd choose the path that makes you stronger, even if it hurts more. She stepped back. But I'm not human anymore. Haven't been for a very long time. My choices are calculated across millennia. Yours only need to account for the life you have left. That's a gift I lost when I became this. Derek looked at the device, then at her. How do I know the evidence is real? How do I know you're not manipulating both sides? You don't. That's the point. Faith requires uncertainty. Trust requires risk. She walked toward the exit. The negotiations start in 20 minutes. Whatever you decide, decide quickly. And Lieutenant? There's no wrong answer here, only consequences you'll have to live with. She left him alone with impossible knowledge and a choice that felt like drowning. Derek stood there for 10 minutes, device heavy in his hand, mind racing through scenarios. If he revealed the deception, humanity gained tactical advantage, but strategic dependence. If he stayed silent, people would die, but lessons would be learned. Both paths led to survival. She'd said so. But survival and thriving were different things. He made his decision and walked back to the briefing room. Ambassador Steele was finalizing negotiation positions when Derek entered. He caught her eye, held up the device, and watched her expression shift from annoyance to sharp attention. Ambassador, I need 1 minute of your time, privately. Steele's eyes narrowed, but she gestured for him to approach. Derek handed her the device and watched her face cycle through shock, anger, and cold calculation as she reviewed the evidence. When she looked up, her expression was granite. "Change of plans," Steele announced to the room. "The negotiations are postponed, pending verification of certain intelligence. Captain Fletcher, increase security around the Catharan delegation. Dr. Hansen, prepare additional virus production protocols. We may need them sooner than expected." The room exploded into questions. Derek didn't listen. He walked back to Observation Deck 7, knowing what he'd find. She was there, hood up now, face obscured. "I made my choice," Derek said. "I chose the easier path now. Does that disappoint you?" "No." Her voice carried something that might have been approval. "You chose based on the information available and the values you hold. That's all any being can do, mortal or otherwise. The consequences will teach you what you need to learn. Will people die because of my choice? People will die regardless. The question is always when, how many, and what their deaths accomplish." She turned to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, Lieutenant, you're learning faster than most. Your species shows promise. Keep surprising me." "Wait, what happens now? To Krathok? To the Empire?" "Now humanity gets stronger and the Empire gets more desperate. The calculations shift. New probabilities emerge. I adjust protection parameters accordingly." She looked back, and he caught a glimpse of her face beneath the hood. Tired, towerful. "And somewhere in the infinite branches of what comes next, you and I have this conversation again, making different choices, reaching different ends. That's the burden of my existence, Lieutenant. Experiencing every version of every moment, trying to guide all of them toward the same goal. Survival." "Survival," she agreed. "It's not glorious. It's not even particularly noble, but it's the foundation everything else builds on. Remember that when the hard times come, and they will come." She vanished into the station's crowds, a nobody among thousands, an immortal playing chess with civilizations while humanity struggled to understand the rules. Derek watched the Catharan ships through the window and wondered which future he'd just chosen. In 8 months, he'd have his answer. For now, he had a war to fight and a sister to protect, and choices that would echo through probabilities he couldn't see, but someone was always calculating. The Empire learned that day that humanity had teeth. But they also learned that someone ancient stood behind those teeth, and that was a lesson that would reshape everything.
The Catharan response came faster than anyone predicted.
Supreme Commander Krathok didn't retreat when confronted with evidence of his deception. He didn't protest or deny. He simply stood in the diplomatic chamber, all 9 feet of scaled authority, and spoke words that would change everything. "You have a guardian," Krathok said, his voice translated through speakers that struggled with the harmonic depths. "An ancient one. We suspected when our forces retreated from Cathara Prime. We knew when our dreadnoughts fell silent at Stryker. Now you confirm it by possessing intelligence you could not have acquired through conventional means." Ambassador Steele kept her expression neutral. "I don't know what you're talking about. Lies waste both our times, Ambassador." Krathok's eyes, triple-pupilled and alien, swept across the human delegation. "The Ancient One who walks among you has protected your species for millennia. We have records. Fragmentary, ancient, but clear. She has ended wars, toppled empires, and prevented extinction events across a dozen civilizations. The galaxy fears her because the galaxy cannot kill her." The room went silent. Derek felt his stomach drop. This wasn't part of any calculation he'd been shown. "You're attempting to deflect from your own deception," Steele said, but her voice carried less certainty. "I am attempting to negotiate honestly for the first time." Krathok leaned forward, his posture both threatening and strangely vulnerable. "The Catharan Empire has existed for 8,000 years. In that time, we have encountered 3 species protected by ancient ones. 2 of those species no longer exist, not because we destroyed them, because their guardians eventually abandoned them." Lawrence spoke up from the scientific delegation. "You're claiming these ancient ones just leave after protecting species for millennia? They leave when protection becomes imprisonment. When the protected species stops growing because they rely on intervention instead of evolution, Krithok's claws clicked against the table. We have archival footage of the Torvan civilization. 2 million years old, technologically advanced beyond comprehension, utterly dependent on their ancient one. When she finally left, they collapsed within a century. Could not function without her. Could not solve problems. Could not adapt. Could not survive the galaxy's natural pressures. This is speculation, Steele said. Ancient myths twisted to serve your political agenda that explain how you acquired classified Catharan military communications. Explain how your base knew exactly where to position defenses against our boarding tactics. Explain how a single civilian transport disabled 4 dreadnoughts using technology that violates every known law of physics. Krithok's voice rose. We are not fools, Ambassador. We know she is here. We know she protects you, and we know that eventually that protection will destroy you more completely than any weapon we could deploy. Derek's communicator buzzed. Collins, messaging urgently. She says to let him talk. This is important, Krithok continued, his tone shifting to something almost resembling respect. The Catharan Empire proposes a different treaty, not peace through mutual destruction. Peace through mutual growth. We will withdraw from contested territories. We will cease aggression against human settlements. We will even provide technological exchanges that accelerate your development. In exchange for what? Steele asked. In exchange for you ordering your Ancient One to stand down, to stop intervening in our conflict. To let humanity and the Catharan Empire resolve our differences through conventional means without her influence tilting probabilities in your favor. Krithok stood to his full height. Let us fight fairly, Ambassador. Let both our species earn their survival instead of having it calculated and arranged by an immortal who sees us as children needing constant supervision. The diplomatic chamber erupted. Half the human delegation shouted denials. The other half demanded explanations. Military officers looked at each other with dawning horror. Scientists began frantically searching databases for references to ancient ones. Derek stood and walked out, following instinct and the certainty that she was already waiting. He found her 3 decks down, in an unused cargo bay, hood pulled back, an expression unreadable. He's forcing your hand, Derek said, exposing you publicly. Krithok is smarter than I gave him credit for. That's dangerous, she paced. Movements too fluid for normal human anatomy. He's right, of course. About the Torvens, about dependency, about the trap of endless protection. I've seen it happen. I've watched civilizations wither under my care like plants in too much shade. So what do? I have 3 options. She counted on fingers that seemed to have too many joints. 1, I eliminate Krithok and anyone who knows about me. Silence the truth and maintain the comfortable fiction. It would work for maybe another century before someone else figured it out. That's murder. That's calculation. Remove variables that threaten optimal outcomes. No emotion in her voice. Option 2, I withdraw completely. Stop intervening. Stop protecting. Let humanity face the Empire without my influence. See if you've grown enough to survive on your own. And if we haven't, then you join the Torvens in history's graveyard, and I move on to the next species that shows promise. She met his eyes. I've done it before, Lieutenant. I'll do it again. Attachment is dangerous when you exist across infinite timelines. Derek felt rage building in his chest. You said we'd survive. You said the probabilities. I said you'd survive with my intervention. Without it, she shrugged. 43% chance of extinction within 50 years, 68% within a century. The Empire is old, experienced, and patient. You're clever and adaptable, but numerically inferior and technologically behind. The math is brutal. Then what's option 3? Option 3 is complicated. She walked to a viewport showing the Catharan ships. I stay, but I change how I operate. No more direct intervention. No more probability manipulation. No more calculated guidance through data chips and convenient intelligence. Instead, I become what Krithok is really asking for. A witness. Someone who watches, records, and intervenes only at the absolute edge of extinction. Not before. People will die. Many people will die. Wars will be lost. Colonies will burn. Humanity will suffer in ways I could prevent with a thought. Her voice carried millennia of sorrow. But you'll grow. You'll learn. You'll develop the strength to survive without me. And when I finally do leave, because I will eventually leave, you won't collapse like the Torvens. You'll endure. Derek stared at her, this impossibly old being wearing a human face, and understood what she was really saying. You're asking permission. From me, from humanity. I'm asking one human I've come to respect what he thinks his species needs. It's not binding. It's not even particularly logical. But I've existed so long that sometimes I forget what it's like to have stakes and immediate outcomes. She smiled sadly. You remind me. So I'm asking, what would you choose, Derek Hansen? Protection that weakens, or freedom that might kill you? Derek thought about his sister's virus, developed through human ingenuity. Thought about the battles won through courage and sacrifice. Thought about a species that had clawed its way from caves to stars without any guardian's help for most of that journey. We grew up without you, openly watching, he said finally. We survived wars, plagues, near extinctions, and we did it ourselves. Maybe we need to remember how that feels. That's option 3 then, but you stay. You watch. And if we're really about to go extinct, truly extinct, you step in one last time. One last time, she agreed. After that, you're on your own forever. No more Ancient One. No more Guardian. Just humanity alone in a galaxy that doesn't care whether you live or die. We've always been alone, Derek said. We just didn't know someone was watching over us. Maybe it's time we did know. Time we understood what we're really capable of without a safety net. She nodded slowly. I'll inform Krethok his terms are accepted. The Ketharan Empire and humanity will resolve their conflict without my interference. Both species get to prove themselves worthy of survival through their own merits. And if we lose, then I was wrong about you. It's happened before. She pulled her hood up, becoming nobody again. But I don't think I'm wrong, Lieutenant. I've watched your species for a very long time. You're stubborn, creative, and refuse to accept impossible odds. Those traits have served you well. They'll continue to serve you. She started to leave, then paused. One more thing. When you return to the negotiation chamber, Ambassador Steele will have questions. Tell her the truth. Tell everyone the truth. Humanity deserves to know they've had a guardian and that she's stepping back. The age of secret protection ends today. The age of earned survival begins. They'll panic. They'll adapt. That's what humans do. She walked toward the cargo bay exit. I'll be watching, Derek. Always watching. But from now on, the choices are yours and yours alone. Make 'em count. She vanished into the station's corridors. Derek stood alone, feeling the weight of what had just been decided settling onto his shoulders and onto every human in existence. He walked back to the diplomatic chamber, where Ambassador Steele and Supreme Commander Krethok were locked in heated argument, where his species' future hung in balance, where truth was about to shatter comfortable illusions. He took a breath and stepped inside. Ambassador, Derek said, his voice cutting through the chaos. I have something you all need to hear. About who's been protecting us, and about what happens now that she's stepping back. The room fell silent, and Derek Hansen, just one lieutenant who'd survived an impossible crash and met an impossible woman, told humanity the truth about their guardian and their future. The Empire listened. The galaxy watched. And somewhere in the spaces between probability and certainty, an immortal nobody smiled and hoped she'd made the right choice. For once in her infinite existence, she didn't know the outcome. It felt terrifying and wonderful and exactly like being human again. The Ketharan response came faster than anyone predicted. Supreme Commander Krethok didn't retreat when confronted with evidence of his deception. He didn't protest or deny. He simply stood in the diplomatic chamber, all 9 feet of scaled authority, and spoke words that would change everything. You have a guardian, Krethok said, his voice translated through speakers that struggled with the harmonic depths. An ancient one we suspected when our forces retreated from Cathara Prime. We knew when our dreadnoughts fell silent at Stryker. Now you confirm it by possessing intelligence you could not have acquired through conventional means. Ambassador Steele kept her expression neutral. I don't know what you're talking about. Lies waste both our times, Ambassador. Krithok's eyes, triple-pupilled and alien, swept across the human delegation. The Ancient One who walks among you has protected your species for millennia. We have records, fragmentary, ancient, but clear. Put it into him. She has ended wars, toppled empires, and prevented extinction events across a dozen civilizations. The galaxy fears her because the galaxy cannot kill her. The room went silent. Derek felt his stomach drop. This wasn't part of any calculation he'd been shown. You're attempting to deflect from your own deception, Steele said, but her voice carried less certainty. I am attempting to negotiate honestly for the first time. Krithok leaned forward, his posture both threatening and strangely vulnerable. The Ketharan Empire has existed for 8,000 years. In that time, we have encountered 3 species protected by Ancient Ones. 2 of those species no longer exist. Not because we destroyed them, because their guardians eventually abandoned them. Lauren spoke up from the scientific delegation. You're claiming these Ancient Ones just leave? After protecting species for millennia? They leave when protection becomes imprisonment. When the protected species stops growing because they rely on intervention instead of evolution. Krithok's claws clicked against the table. We have archival footage of the Torvan civilization. 2 million years old, technologically advanced beyond comprehension, utterly dependent on their Ancient One. When she finally left, they collapsed within a century, could not function without her, could not solve problems, could not adapt, could not survive the galaxy's natural pressures. This is speculation, Steele said. Ancient myths twisted to serve your political agenda. Then explain how you acquired classified Ketharan military communications. Explain how your base knew exactly where to position defenses against our boarding tactics. Explain how a single civilian transport disabled 4 dreadnoughts using technology that violates every known law of physics. Krithok's voice rose. We are not fools, Ambassador. We know she is here. We know she protects you. And we know that eventually that protection will destroy you more completely than any weapon we could deploy. Derek's communicator buzzed, Collins messaging urgently. She says to let him talk. This is important, Krithok continued, his tone shifting to something almost resembling respect. The Ketharan Empire proposes a different treaty, not peace through mutual destruction, peace through mutual growth. We will withdraw from contested territories. We will cease aggression against human settlements. We will even provide technological exchanges that accelerate your development. In exchange for what? Steele asked. In exchange for you ordering your Ancient One to stand down, to stop intervening in our conflict. To let humanity and the Ketharan Empire resolve our differences through conventional means, without her influence tilting probabilities in your favor. Krithok stood to his full height. Let us fight fairly, Ambassador. Let both our species earn their survival instead of having it calculated and arranged by an immortal who sees us as children needing constant supervision. The diplomatic chamber erupted. Half the human delegation shouted denials. The other half demanded explanations. Military officers looked at each other with dawning horror. Scientists began frantically searching databases for references to Ancient Ones. Derek stood and walked out, following instinct and the certainty that she was already waiting. He found her 3 decks down in an unused cargo bay, hood pulled back and expression unreadable. He's forcing your hand, Derek said. Exposing you publicly. Krithok is smarter than I gave him credit for. That's dangerous. She paced, movements too fluid for normal human anatomy. He's right, of course, about the Torvans, about dependency, about the trap of endless protection. I've seen it happen. I've watched civilizations wither under my care like plants in too much shade. So what do? I have 3 options. She counted on fingers that seemed to have too many joints. 1, I eliminate Krithok and anyone who knows about me. Silence the truth and maintain the comfortable fiction. It would work for maybe another century before someone else figured it out. That's murder. That's calculation. Remove variables that threaten optimal outcomes. No emotion in her voice. Option 2. I withdraw completely. Stop intervening. Stop protecting. Let humanity face the Empire without my influence. See if you've grown enough to survive on your own. And if we haven't, then you join the Torvins in history's graveyard, and I move on to the next species that shows promise. She met his eyes. I've done it before, Lieutenant. I'll do it again. Attachment is dangerous when you exist across infinite timelines. Derek felt rage building in his chest. You said we'd survive. You said the probabilities. I said you'd survive with my intervention. Without it? She shrugged. 43% chance of extinction within 50 years, 68% within a century. The Empire is old, experienced, and patient. You're clever and adaptable, but numerically inferior and technologically behind. The math is brutal. Then what's option 3? Option 3 is complicated. She walked to a viewport showing the Catharan ships. I stay, but I change how I operate. No more direct intervention. No more probability manipulation. No more calculated guidance through data chips and convenient intelligence. Instead, I become what Krythok is really asking for. A witness, someone who watches, records, and intervenes only at the absolute edge of extinction. Not before. People will die. Many people will die. Wars will be lost. Colonies will burn. Humanity will suffer in ways I could prevent with a thought. Her voice carried millennia of sorrow. But you'll grow. You'll learn. You'll develop the strength to survive without me. And when I finally do leave, because I will eventually leave, you won't collapse like the Torvins. You'll endure. Derek stared at her, this impossibly old being wearing a human face, and understood what she was really saying. You're asking permission from me, from humanity. I'm asking one human I've come to respect what he thinks his species needs. It's not binding. It's not even particularly logical. But I've existed so long that sometimes I forget what it's like to have stakes in immediate outcomes. She smiled sadly. You remind me. So I'm asking, what would you choose, Derek Hansen? Protection that weakens, or freedom that might kill you? Derek thought about his sister's virus, developed through human ingenuity. Thought about the battles won through courage and sacrifice. Thought about a species that had clawed its way from caves to stars without any Guardian's help for most of that journey. We grew up without you openly watching, he said finally. We survived wars, plagues, near extinctions, and we did it ourselves. Maybe we need to remember how that feels. That's option 3 then. But you stay. You watch. And if we're really about to go extinct, truly extinct, you step in one last time. One last time, she agreed. After that, you're on your own forever. No more Ancient One. No more Guardian. Just humanity. Alone in a galaxy that doesn't care whether you live or die. We've always been alone, Derek said. We just didn't know someone was watching over us. Maybe it's time we did know. Time we understood what we're really capable of without a safety net. She nodded slowly. I'll inform Krythok his terms are accepted. The Catharan Empire and humanity will resolve their conflict without my interference. Both species get to prove themselves worthy of survival through their own merits. And if we lose, then I was wrong about you. It's happened before. She pulled her hood up, becoming nobody again. But I don't think I'm wrong, Lieutenant. I've watched your species for a very long time. You're stubborn, creative, and refuse to accept impossible odds. Those traits have served you well. They'll continue to serve you. She started to leave, then paused. One more thing. When you return to the negotiation chamber, Ambassador Steele will have questions. Tell her the truth. Tell everyone the truth. Humanity deserves to know they've had a guardian and that she's stepping back. The age of secret protection ends today. The age of earned survival begins. They'll panic, they'll adapt. That's what humans do. She walked toward the cargo bay exit. I'll be watching, Derek. Always watching. But from now on, the choices are yours and yours alone. Make 'em count. She vanished into the station's corridors. Derek stood alone, feeling the weight of what had just been decided settling onto his shoulders and onto every human in existence. He walked back to the diplomatic chamber, where Ambassador Steele and Supreme Commander Krithok were locked in heated argument, where his species' future hung in balance, where truth was about to shatter comfortable illusions. He took a breath and stepped inside. "Ambassador," Derek said, his voice cutting through the chaos, "I have something you all need to hear. About who's been protecting us, and about what happens now that she's stepping back." The room fell silent, and Derek Hansen, just one lieutenant who'd survived an impossible crash and met an impossible woman, told humanity the truth about their guardian and their future. The Empire listened, the galaxy watched, and somewhere in the spaces between probability and certainty, an immortal nobody smiled and hoped she'd made the right choice. For once in her infinite existence, she didn't know the outcome. It felt terrifying and wonderful and exactly like being human again. The war resumed 3 days after the truth went public, not because negotiations failed. Because humanity chose to fight. Derek watched it happen from Earth, grounded by command and assigned to strategic planning, while the galaxy processed revelations that shattered centuries of assumptions. The Ancient One existed. She'd been guiding humanity. And now she was stepping back. The response was chaos. Religious groups declared her divine. Scientists demanded proof. Politicians argued whether her withdrawal was abandonment or liberation. Conspiracy theorists insisted she'd never existed at all, that the whole thing was propaganda to justify military escalation. But the soldiers, the people actually fighting, they understood immediately. They were on their own now. Truly, completely on their own. The Ketharan Empire honored Krithok's agreement, withdrawing from contested space and establishing neutral zones. But smaller conflicts erupted almost immediately. Territorial disputes, resource competition, border skirmishes that escalated because nobody was calculating probabilities and arranging convenient intelligence drops. People died. More than before, ships were lost. Outposts fell. Humanity was learning what survival cost without a safety net. Derek spent his days in planning sessions, analyzing Ketharan tactics without the benefit of perfect intelligence. His nights were worse, filled with messages from soldiers asking if the Ancient One would return, if she was really gone, if they were truly alone. He had no answers that satisfied anyone, including himself. Lauren threw herself into research developing countermeasures against Ketharan adaptation to her virus. She worked 18-hour days driven by the knowledge that nobody was manipulating probabilities in her favor anymore. Success or failure rested entirely on her shoulders. "I keep waiting for a data chip to appear," she told Derek during one of his visits to her lab. "Some convenient breakthrough handed to me by our guardian angel. But there's nothing. Just me, my team, and problems that don't have predetermined solutions." "How does it feel?" "Terrifying. Exhilarating. Real." She looked up from her microscope, exhaustion evident in every line of her face. "I think I prefer it this way, even if it's harder." Derek understood. The weight was crushing, but it was honest weight, earned through choices that mattered because failure was genuinely possible. 6 weeks after the withdrawal announcement, Derek received orders to report to Forward Base Stryker. Captain Fletcher had requested him specifically for a mission that required someone who understood what humanity was up against. The briefing room was packed when Derek arrived. Fletcher stood at the front with maps showing Ketharan fleet movements, all of it derived from conventional intelligence gathering instead of Ancient One probability calculations. "We've identified a critical weakness in the Empire's supply chain," Fletcher began. "A logistics hub in the Draxis sector that supports their military operations across 3 regions. Intelligence believes we can strike it, cause significant disruption, and force them back to the negotiating table from a position of strength." "Intelligence believes or knows?" someone asked. "Believes. We're working without certainty now. Every mission is calculated risk instead of guided probability." Fletcher's expression was grim. "The operation requires precision insertion, minimal engagement time, and perfect execution. Failure means losing valuable ships and personnel with nothing to show for it." Derek studied the tactical display. The hub was heavily defended, positioned in a gravity well that made approach difficult, and supported by rapid response fleets that could reinforce within minutes. It was exactly the kind of operation the Ancient One would have guided them through, with data showing optimal approach vectors and timing windows. Now they had educated guesses and courage. "I'm leading the strike team," Fletcher continued. "Hansen, you'll fly lead fighter escort. We launch in 6 hours. Questions." Dozens of hands went up. Questions about support, backup plans, contingencies if things went wrong. Fletcher answered what he could, admitted uncertainty about the rest, and dismissed them with final instructions to prep and pray. Derek headed to the hangar, finding his fighter already being serviced by ground crew who worked with the focused intensity of people who knew nobody was guaranteeing their success. Collins appeared beside his craft, no longer hiding behind disguises. She'd been reassigned to Fletcher's tactical team, her knowledge of Ketharan psychology valuable now that humanity had to understand their enemy instead of just following calculated countermeasures. "She's watching," Collins said quietly. "From a distance, no interference, but she's monitoring." "Does that help?" "It helps me sleep at night knowing if we're about to go extinct, she'll step in. Beyond that?" Collins shrugged. "We're on our own, same as every other species that got this far, except we know we had help. The others who made it, did they know too? Some did, most didn't. She's experimenting with transparency this time, seeing if knowledge of her existence makes you stronger or weaker." Collins checked her tactical pad. Early data suggests stronger. Applications to military service are up 40%. People want to prove they don't need her. Or they're terrified of fighting without her and want safety in numbers. That too. Humans are complicated. It's why she finds you interesting. The mission launched on schedule, 12 ships entering hyperspace toward Draxis sector, with nothing but conventional navigation and human judgment guiding them. The approach was textbook. The initial assault went perfectly. Fletcher's team infiltrated the logistics hub, planted charges, and began extraction. Then the Ketharans adapted. Their rapid response fleet arrived 2 minutes early, blocking escape routes and trapping half the strike team inside the facility. Fighter screens deployed in patterns nobody had predicted. Defensive systems activated that intelligence hadn't known existed. Derek found himself in a dogfight against 6 enemy craft, his computer screaming warnings while plasma fire turned space into a kill zone. He destroyed 3 using skills honed through training and experience, not probability calculation. The 4th got a lucky shot that sheared off his port engine. Derek spun wildly, fighting for control, watching his wingman explode in a flash of light and fury. The 2 remaining enemy fighters closed for the kill. He was going to die, not because fate demanded it, not because calculations had gone wrong, just because war was random and cruel and he'd been unlucky. Derek prepared for the end. Then the enemy fighters simply stopped moving, engines dead, weapons dark. Not both of them, all of them. Every Ketharan fighter in the engagement zone, over 30 craft, suddenly disabled in perfect synchronization. Derek's calm erupted with shocked voices as the strike team seized the opportunity, completing extraction and fleeing toward hyperspace. They made it out. All of them. 0 casualties despite overwhelming odds and terrible luck. The fleet regrouped in neutral space, damaged teams working frantically while commanders tried to understand what had happened. Derek knew. Everyone knew. She'd intervened. Fletcher found Derek in the hangar, both of them exhausted and covered in sweat. "She said she wouldn't interfere," Fletcher said, anger and relief warring in his voice. "She said she'd intervene at the edge of extinction. Maybe we were closer than we thought. 30 fighters isn't extinction, it's a tactical setback." Derek shook his head. "You're thinking too small. We lose that strike team, we lose momentum. We lose momentum, we lose hope. We lose hope, we stop fighting. Eventually, extinction." He looked out at the stars. "She sees farther than we do. Maybe we really were at the edge." Collins joined them, her expression unreadable. "I have a message. From her. For both of you and for everyone who needs to hear it." She played an audio file, voice unmistakable even through speakers. "That was your one save. Your safety net deployed because you genuinely needed it. The next time you face impossible odds, I won't be there. Learn from this. Adapt. Grow stronger. Prove you can survive without me, stepping in every time death seems inevitable. You have the capability. I've seen it across infinite timelines. Now show me you can access it without my interference." The message ended. Fletcher laughed bitterly. She saves us and lectures us in the same breath. She's teaching us, Derek said, like a parent letting their child fall so they learn to walk. I hate it. Me too. But she's right. Derek looked at his destroyed fighter, at the debris from ships that hadn't made it, at the cost of victory without perfect information. We can do this. We just have to learn how. The mission's success, despite the intervention, proved something critical. Humanity could operate without constant guidance, could adapt, improvise, and survive through skill instead of calculated probability. The war continued. Ships were lost. Battles went badly. Colonies suffered. But humanity endured, and somewhere in the darkness between stars, an Ancient One watched her children stumble and fall and rise again, learning the lessons that would define them long after she was gone. Derek returned to Earth with commendations and questions that would never be fully answered. Lauren's research succeeded, then failed, then succeeded again through her own brilliance instead of guided breakthrough. The Empire learned that humanity without their guardian was still dangerous, just differently dangerous. And in the spaces where certainty used to live, humanity discovered something more valuable: the pride of earning their own survival. 5 years passed. Derek Hansen stood on the observation platform of Remembrance Station, humanity's newest deep space installation, and watched construction crews finish the monument that would commemorate everything they'd survived. The war had ended 2 years ago, not with surrender or conquest, but with genuine peace forged through mutual exhaustion and hard-won respect. The Catharon Empire and humanity now traded instead of fought, competed instead of destroyed, and both species were stronger for it. Lauren had won the Nobel Prize for xenobiology. Her virus had never been deployed offensively after that initial demonstration. The threat alone had been enough, combined with human tactical improvements that proved they could fight conventionally and win. Fletcher commanded an entire battle group now, his tactics studied in military academies across human space. Collins had vanished 3 years ago, her work apparently complete, though Derek sometimes caught glimpses of someone who moved just like her in crowds. And the Ancient One had kept her word. No more interventions, no more convenient intelligence, no more probability manipulation. Humanity had survived on its own merit. But today was different. Today was the reason Derek had been summoned to Remembrance Station alongside 500 other people who'd played critical roles in humanity's survival. Ambassador Steele, now retired, stood at the podium addressing the assembled crowd. We gather here to honor not just those who died in the war, but those who lived and fought and refused to surrender, even when the odds seemed impossible, Steele said, her voice carrying through speakers to millions watching across human space. We honor the generation that learned to stand without a guardian. That chose the harder path because it was the honest one. Derek listened with half his attention. The other half watched the crowd, looking for someone he knew would be there. He found her near the back, hood up, unremarkable, just another civilian attendee among hundreds, but he recognized the way she stood, the slight tilt of her head that suggested she was listening to 1,000 conversations simultaneously across infinite timelines. The ceremony continued. Names were read, medals awarded, speeches given about courage and sacrifice in the human spirit. Then Steele said something that made Derek's breath catch. And finally, we acknowledge the being known only as the Ancient One. She asked to remain anonymous. Asked that we not build statues or create religions around her existence, but history demands honesty, so we honor her choice to step back while also acknowledging what she did for us. Steele gestured toward the monument being unveiled. It showed a cloaked figure, features obscured, standing behind a group of humans who faced forward into an uncertain future. The inscription read simply, "She watched. She guided. She let us grow. We honor the guardian who chose our strength over our comfort." The crowd erupted in applause. The hooded figure at the back didn't move, didn't acknowledge the recognition, but Derek saw her shoulders relax slightly, saw something that might have been approval in her posture. The ceremony ended. People dispersed to reception areas, conversations flowing about the future and the past and everything humanity had overcome. Derek found his way to the observation deck where he'd first arrived, knowing she would meet him there if she chose to. She did. 5 years, Derek said without turning around. You kept your word. No interference even when things got bad. They never got bad enough. She stood beside him, hood still up. You had several close calls. The Viridian crisis nearly went extinction level. The plague on Halcyon Prime was touch and go. But you solved them, without me. People died who wouldn't have died if you'd intervened. 37 million across all conflicts and crises since I stepped back. No emotion in her voice, just fact. I watched every single death. Knew I could prevent most of them with minimal effort. Chose not to. How do you live with that? I remind myself that the alternative was worse. That the Torvins lost 90 billion when they collapsed after I left them. That species which never learned to stand alone don't survive in a galaxy that doesn't care about fairness. She finally looked at him, pulling back her hood. You think I'm cold. Calculating. Maybe I am, but I love humanity enough to let you hurt so you can grow. Derek studied her face. This woman who looked 30 but carried millennia behind her eyes. Are you leaving? Is that why you're here? Eventually. Not today. Not this year. Maybe not this century. She turned back to the stars. I'll stay in the background watching until I'm certain you don't need me anymore. Until the probability of your extinction without my intervention drops below 0.01%. What is it now? 3.7% over the next 1,000 years. Better than it was. Not good enough yet. She smiled slightly. You're doing well, Lieutenant. Your species is doing well. The Empire respects you now. Other civilizations are taking notice. Humanity is becoming a power in its own right. Thanks to you. Thanks to you. I just prevented extinction a few times. You built everything else yourselves. She pulled her hood back up. I should go. These ceremonies make me uncomfortable. Too much attention. Wait. Derek reached out, then stopped himself. I need to ask. All those other species you protected. The ones that failed. Did you care about them like you care about us? She was quiet for a long moment. I cared about all of them. The Torvins, the Kresh, the Yalani. Every species I've guided and protected and eventually lost. Each failure taught me something. Each success gave me hope. Her voice carried ancient sorrow. Humanity isn't special because you're better or more deserving. You're special because you're here now, because you're the ones I'm currently trying to save. In 1,000,000 years, there might be another species I care about just as much. That's the burden of immortality. Every love is genuine. Every loss is real. Nothing lasts forever except me. That sounds lonely. It is. But it's also purposeful. Someone needs to care about the species trying to survive. Someone needs to remember the ones that didn't make it. I've chosen that role, and I'll carry it until the universe finally ends, or I find a way to stop existing. She started walking toward the exit. Take care of yourself, Derek Hansen. I'll be watching from the shadows, hoping I never have to step into the light again. And if you do have to step in, she paused at the doorway, looking back one final time. Then I'll save you one last time and leave forever. That's the deal. One more extinction-level intervention, then humanity stands completely alone. Forever. Her expression softened. Don't waste it, Lieutenant. Make it count, she left. Derek stood alone on the observation deck, watching ships move through space carrying humans who would never know how close they'd come to extinction, how carefully they'd been guided, how much their guardian had sacrificed to let them grow. He thought about Lauren, brilliant and independent, solving problems through her own genius, about Fletcher, commanding fleets through strategy instead of probability manipulation, about millions of humans living, loving, fighting, and surviving on their own merit. They'd done it. They'd proven they could stand without a safety net. And somehow, that made the Ancient One's sacrifice even more profound. She'd given up the satisfaction of protecting them forever so they could have the pride of protecting themselves. Lauren, messaging about a new research opportunity. Fletcher, asking if he wanted to join the next deep space exploration mission. His father, retired Senator Hansen, inviting him to dinner to discuss the future. Life continuing. Humanity growing, the galaxy opening before them. Derek sent his responses and headed toward the reception, where people celebrated survival and honored sacrifice and looked forward to futures they would build themselves. Behind him, through the observation windows, Stars burned with ancient light. And somewhere among them, a woman who looked like nobody watched over 7 billion souls, calculating probabilities, preventing extinction, and hoping that someday she could finally rest. But not today. Not while humanity still needed her, even from a distance. Not while there was still work to do. She pulled her hood tighter and walked into the crowd. Invisible again, anonymous again, nobody again. Exactly as it should be. Exactly as it had always been, the Ancient One who protected from shadows, who loved through sacrifice, who would carry the weight of infinite choices across infinite timelines until her children finally learned to walk alone. And watching from that observation deck, Derek Hansen understood something profound. The greatest act of love wasn't protection. It was letting go, even when it hurt. Especially when it hurt. He raised his glass toward the stars in silent toast to the guardian humanity would never fully understand, but would always, in their own way, remember. Then he turned toward the future and walked forward into it, free and uncertain and alive. Humanity, fuck yeah. Not because they were protected, because they'd